let's jump right into today's session. As I said, we have a top speaker with us today, Terje Osmundsen, the CEO and founder of Empower New Energy. He brings with him today 40 years of experience in renewable energy, diplomacy, and telecom. Next to Empower New Energy, he's also a board member of various solar and energy companies, SolarDoc, Norsk eFuel, NextFuel AB. Many of you know him from his time at Scatec Solar before Empower New Energy. But fewer might know that Terje was also the editor-in-chief and CEO of the newspaper Monday Morning Norway, as well as the political advisor to the Prime Minister in Norway in previous professional lives. So Terje, I'm very, very happy to welcome you. It's always a pleasure to have you. Thanks for joining. I know on top of this that you have a particularly busy schedule today, so your presence is even more appreciated. I've given you the controls so that you can start sharing your presentation. And I also invite you to unmute yourself so that we will be able to listen to you.
Thank you very much. And I'm very pleased to be able to meet you at this occasion. I just want to make sure that you can now see my, can you now see my screen?
Yes, there.
Yeah. So, and I will address this from a very difficult, probably, as you probably understand from the presentation, the introduction from John, I'm not at all the technical expert, but will give some perspectives of how we see, and from my experience and what we see now in Empower Energy, storage actually completely is in process of changing the landscape for CNI solar in Africa. And I think that would be my kind of contribution here to try to illustrate some of the issues and challenges that we are facing in that respect. For those of you who don't know Empower Energy, let me give you just a few headlines. We are a renewable energy investor and a co-developer, Norwegian owned but present across Africa, focusing on CNI. We are currently operating assets in Egypt, Morocco, Ghana, and Nigeria, and we are investing now also into projects in Kenya and Tunisia, Cameroon. We are typically working with a partnership model, which means that we work with trusted partners on development, EPC, O&M, and it is through that partnership model that we're able to actually invest and operate several projects despite a lean and small organization. As you see, our team is very diverse. We have people in North Africa, West Africa, East Africa. We have actually 15 different nationalities working for the team, and with a big variety of skills, technical, commercial, legal, among others. We are currently, as I mentioned, present in the market which are marked in green, and we are investing into new opportunities, exploring new opportunities in some additional new markets. I think what we can say that of the, as I said, we have now about 10 projects actually in various stages of execution, construction. We are now addressing actually more than 30 projects which we are working with together with our partners in selected markets. And in terms of investments, we have now invested the last 2 years more than $30 million into CNI sector, and we are targeting to invest the double of that amount the next year. So moving from our introduction over to the area of storage. First of all, I think that it is important from my perspective to highlight that globally we have seen a quite a dramatic fall in the cost of batteries, of energy, of BESS. What we do see, however, and you see these numbers are very familiar. These are global numbers from Bloomberg, both on how it has developed until 2023. Of course, these are global numbers, and of course, it's not the necessarily because this is average for utility, CNI, battery, and mostly, of course, EV will play a very significant part of this. However, what we see from the market space is, of course, there's a big gap between the cost that you can read in the media that for storage and what it actually costs to have a tailored, complete best solution adapted to your factory or your installations in the country in Africa. One part of that, of course, is that the battery itself maybe is only half the total cost of capex of a battery solution. But I also would like to highlight that we see, and I come back to that, is that there is a strong demand for quality battery solutions, and Africa is probably paying a much too high price because of lack of competition and lack of resources. So that signals to me that we will see in the years to come a significant drop in costs of battery, both for the global trend, but also because of the increased availability in African countries. And my main point here is that we will see that with this drop, which could be maybe 10-15% per year, we are going to see a significant number of new opportunities opening up that was not economic, has not been economic up to now. I would like to share with you a great example. So just to be sure, we had in Pony Energy, we've been looking at battery solutions as part of our investments in several cases, but we have not so far done a lot of investments in the area. However, now we have just actually yesterday at the World Environment Day, we had the pleasure of commissioning what I would call a first of a kind solar plus battery solution for a large grocery chain in Nigeria called Just Right Superstores. This is a visionary this is a company partly owned and led by a visionary leader who saw that with the increasing dependence on diesel and the unreliable grid, he was paying more and more for the power. And he also has a very strong, I would say, societal responsibility approach, sustainability approach. So he started looking for what could we do with this, and he teamed up with a local company called the Power Cell. Huawei has been involved in this from very start, and then Pony Energy came in February last year, where we started looking at how this could be structured and financed in a way that was attractive to all parties. As a result of this, there has now been a $6.5 million investment, which has resulted in solar plus battery solutions for the first 10 of the Just Right stores. The plan is actually to follow up with additional number of stores. And the great result of this is that it is not, I mean, normally, of course, when you're dealing with PV, you are discussing maybe targeting 20-30% of renewable penetration for businesses, or maybe 40%. But in this case, the average solar penetration at the 10 sites of Just Right is then approaching around 85%. So that means that the stores economically, I mean, this is what is the good news here is that this is also economically attractive. It has, of course, been a challenge to find a solution with such a relatively big battery packaged solution, which is attractive for the off-taker in terms of the fixed cost. But this is a solution which both saving energy cost and, as I said, significant savings of CO2 because of the reduction of taking away 85% of the fossil fuel generated power. So this is a very interesting case that I'm sure is going to will follow very closely, and I'm sure also the market is going to be interesting to see, because it kind of it kind of go to the contrary of the common wisdom that you cannot save energy cost with such a high battery use or such a high battery package. But in this case, we have been able. It's a 15-year contract, and after that, the installation will be, of course, taken over by the off-taker, just right. We're very happy to see this. And this event, as you see here, was a big inauguration event with the participation of various stakeholders here. The Norwegian ambassador is actually doing the ribbon cutting for this installation. So this is yeah, I think I will just leave it there. Then I will give another example of a very important investment that we are currently executing. This is in the telecom sector. There is a group, and of course, a group in Nigeria called the Pan-African Towers, who is one of the tower companies who have been struggling with the cost of diesel and the general issues of maintenance and getting access to fuel. So they have taken the bold initiative to engage with another partner of Empowering Energy, which is First Watt. And First Watt has then run some pilots for Pan-Africa Towers, finding an optimized solution with solar and batteries to replace diesel, and partly also grid, mainly then replace with diesel gensets. And based on those experiences, we have then together with the partners come up with a solution which will now then replace or will solarize 225 sites, telecom towers. This is then, of course, 3 different standardized solutions for power to this with the battery and BESS and controllers and everything. This is various standardized solutions, so 3 different standardized solutions, which are then applied to the different categories of plants. Again, this is a 10-year contract, which will then result in a extremely high solar penetration, of course, at the telecom sites. So those are the 2. We are working with a number of other opportunities in Empower, where we are looking at different issues related to storage, but those are the 2 main executed examples that I can give. So going forward, if we try to maybe draw some lessons and issues to this, I think first of all we see that there are several motivations for off-takers to actually wanting to add the storage to their to the investment. One, of course, is the most important, is that the clients see an opportunity to actually further reduce the cost of energy. And in some cases also, we see that there is a grid tariff which is variable, and at certain points of the day where you have a peak power tariff, you will see that the smaller or more limited the battery solutions can actually also make sense in the terms of optimizing tariffs. The other part, of course, of this the reason for economic reason is that when you look forward, we will see that you will see that because of grid power in some countries will increase in prices, and we will see that. Sorry, I just want to because of access, I needed to sit in. I will just see if I can reduce some of the noise here. Just a moment.
Don't worry about the noise, Terje. It's okay. We can still hear you okay.
Yeah, that's better.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Can you hear me well? Yeah.
Yes, no problem.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. So of course we are still not there that we can make savings by replacing fossil grid power with stored renewables, but of course that is the roadmap that we will see going forward, and I've done a few simulations for some of the projects we've been looking at, for instance, in Kenya, and I think in 3 to 4 years' time, or it's not unrealistic that we will also see it attractive to actually significantly increase the solar PV with batteries to also replace some grid power at part of the day. Of course, energy resilience is extremely important. The hassle of and stability related to today's solutions is an issue for many users in Africa, and of course also the sustainability is very important. What we see now, and I think that is we see now, for instance, in Africa, that there are also manufacturers who are selling products to international companies, and we see that these international companies are more and more asking their African suppliers to document their carbon footprint and also come up with plans to reduce the carbon footprint. And this has driven, in some cases, we see an interest by some users to actually move ahead with solar reducing or securing market reputation and access, and making sure that they are can meet the international requirement. So this is then this is of course just one aspect. Of course, the other one is that we see that there is a drive towards sustainability, and we also see that the local pollution, like in the case of these superstores that I mentioned, of course, for the working environment, for the people, it makes a huge difference when you are working in a store where you are not relying on the continuously running diesel genset. So there is a local pollution element here, which is very important. So those are you could say the three main areas of drivers. If we then go to next slide, there are of course some important issues that we as an investor need to focus upon, and I think it's important for you as more expert. I guess most of you who are listening today are more of the expert on this. I will just bring a perspective as a non-expert, but looking at from an investor perspective. What we see, first of all, is that it sounds very easy, battery, and that sounds very, it's immediately, so intuitively, it doesn't sound to be very complex. But of course, when you dig into it, you see that selecting the right storage solution and designing the right storage solution and operating, maintaining in an optimal way is much more complex for a storage solution than it is for pure solar PV. And I think that is an important thing to start with. It brings higher risk than PV, and that has partly to do, of course, with it's still a relatively new industry, so you don't have the long track record of performance and standard that you maybe would have had in this PV sector. So yes, it is more complex, and I think what we see, we have people in our team who have a long experience from companies who've been pioneers in this area, for instance, one of our Empower Energy's chief technical officer has a long experience as one of the founders of PowerGen, who has been doing batteries and various hybrid mini grid solutions for quite some time in Africa. And what you hear when you listen to those stories is that, of course, there is a lot of mixed operational experience lots of manufacturers who have promised a lot, and where we've seen that on the ground, there has been much more difficult to actually obtain the performance. It could be for various reasons, for temperature, for lack of local resources. Very often it's of course linked to the fact that the expertise needed for the various solutions are not present locally, and therefore you are much more exposed to the technical challenges. There also is an issue here, of course, is that we as an investor we have a policy that we only invest into tier 1 equipment, because that has to do with the reducing the risk of the investment. We see, however, that in the battery, it's very difficult to get the tier 1 manufacturers to actually bring their solutions to the various African markets. So it's always so that brings, of course, the cost, that issue of I think it's a challenge. And I think it's an area that, of course, AFCIA should also engage in. Of course, is to stimulate the use of, or stimulate the most respected manufacturers, to the leading manufacturers, to invest time and resource, so make sure that they are to be more available in the African market. I'm not saying they are unavailable, and as I said, we in Pony Energy have now invested in 2 solutions where we have top quality batteries, but it's always not so easy to get it that way. What we also see, I just have to make a short stop, John, just to make sure. Can you still hear me and see the screen so it works fine?
Absolutely. Yes, no problem.
Right. Very good. So because I discovered that in order to make sure I have the best internet, I needed to sit in a hotel lobby, but I hope it works fine. And I'll just go and get it, ask if I can turn down this. So what we also have seen, of course, is that for battery solutions, doing the feasibility study correctly, especially with the special software that is often required for this kind of demand analysis, and optimizing, running various scenarios in different different operating scenarios to actually test the assumptions in your sizing is extremely important. We have seen many examples of developers who have submitted proposals for PV and batteries, and when we have done the detailed review of these, it's been obvious that the sizing has not been optimal. And what you risk, of course, then is that you overinvest, or you actually under deliver on what you have promised in terms of energy savings and renewable penetration. So it's extremely, to be very clear, I don't think there are not, I mean, the capacity and the know-how to do this kind of proper feasibility study, of course, is still quite young activity, the young immature sector in industry. And what we see, of course, we do that know-how exists, but it needs to be considerably built out, I think, if Africa is going to scale up significantly in the area of storage. And of course, then you have what is important for us, of course, is the warranties. And I think what we see is that, of course, the manufacturers will issue warranties, but you also see that those are subject to a number of very critical conditions, like temperature or other key requirement, number of cycles, and how much they are charged, etc. So we know that having the warranties is not enough. What you also need to do is, of course, is to have an extremely qualified and and a reliable operation partner who can actually maintain and operate the batteries in line with what is requested in the of course in the warranties and what is planned for in the operating plan. If that fails, you are as an investor exposed to not getting the support you need for the manufacturer. So that of course is a key consideration, and much more, I would say, critical in the terms of the area of the battery than in the area of PV panels. And then we've seen the question coming up, what happens so if you imagine that you have a warranty from manufacturer and then there are some operational issues, and then what happens if the manufacturer does not deliver, they're not performing as they have promised? What kind of insurance could you then obtain? I think this is an area where there's a lot of work to be done to see how this kind of guarantees can be insured by third parties. We have not come to the final conclusion on that, but I see that is an area where, because of the still a relatively young industry with the different players and different aspects, I think having the possibility of course, developing a third-party insurance activity in this area would certainly help a lot to speed up the scaling of this market. So if
I think you've clicked on the mute button.
And then just to explain how we in Power New Energy, so how we structure our investments, what we do is that we sign a PPA or a similar type of what we call power support agreement with fixed monthly payments with the energy user. We will then have a similar, and we then have a standard EPC and O&M contract. Very often it's the same company, which is both the EPC and O&M. And then what if you then look at this from a battery perspective, there are some new questions that comes along. Because then of course you have, if you take for instance a PPA, if you have a PPA with a client for supply of electricity, it's very easy if you have a pure PV, but if you add storage, it becomes much more complicated because you are not I mean, in PPA you are getting paid for a number of kilowatt hours that you deliver, but of course in the area of storage it becomes more complicated. We have seen it. We have also seen it can be done, but I think the model that we will recommend, this is partly, of course, also linked to the fact that battery have a shorter life cycle. So for PV, we have 25, maybe even 30 years warranties. You can easily make long-term agreements. What do you do with batteries? We know that, of course, there is a duration which is linked to the number of cycles. It can be 10 years, it can be 8 years, it can be 12, 13 years. So I think contractually, what you probably will then want to do is to, if you have a contract which is more than 10 years, is to make sure that you have a provision for replacement of the storage solution in your financial model and in the contract. Or that you actually have separate, you can also have a separate to parallel contract, one PPA for the PV part and a separate type of lease to own type contract for the battery solution. These things are of course very easily, they can be addressed and solved quite clearly, but it's just the kind of issues that comes up when you of course you want to integrate PV and batteries. So I think I will stop there, saying that my role, I guess, more or less to share with you some overall perspectives seen from Power New Energy, but we have several people in our organization in the various markets who will be able to discuss more in detail with you if you are interested in following this up. But thank you very much for your attention, and I will now stop sharing.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your presentation. Very insightful, and congratulations again on the inauguration of this important project in Nigeria. I know you have a super busy schedule today, so if you allow me, I'll have just a few quick questions for you, and then I'll let you go to the other activities of the day. First question. At some point in your presentation, you mentioned for Just Right that the solution that you have built gives a 85 penetration of solar and covering the electricity need of Just Right. Why not 100?
For the energy cost, because then you would need to prepare. You would need to have quite significant added capacity on batteries just to meet the certain extreme variation. So it is mainly to find a balance between cost and benefit to make sure that we also succeed in reducing the total energy cost for the off-taker.
There's been several questions about the contract length.
Because just to make sure there is a grid also, so that will also part of it. So it's also to take benefits on some grid in some parts of the night. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So it's really a question of optimizing, and 100% happens not to be the optimal solution.
Yes.
We've had several questions about the contract length. So if I understood correctly, for Just Right, you have a 15 years PPA, but for the telecom towers, you have a 10 years PPA. Can you explain why you have those differences? Is this a client preference, or is this related to some technical aspect of the project?
No, I think it's mainly related to finding again the right balance in terms of cost of electricity. So the longer the contract, the lower the monthly payments will be. So it's order to optimize make sure that you have a solution which doesn't bring additional cost to the revenue to the off-taker.
And still talking about those telecom sites, solarizing base sites has been a topic already highlighted by solar professionals for many years. And we see a little bit of movement, and very happy for you that you have been able to crack into this industry and look at 250 towers. But at the same time, there is dozens of thousands of towers across Africa. How do you explain that the tower managers and the telecom operators are not moving faster to solarizing all these towers? If it works for one, it should be working for all. But yet the adoption is still relatively slow.
Yes, it is. And I think this is an area where it's extremely important that, and I think also MAPC, AFCIA, and other players should work with the GSMA Association and operators. They have been, I would say that the telecom companies who they have been really dragging their feet to realize their responsibility in this area. And I think that now there are things happening, and I think that there has been some mixed experience, maybe operationally from some sides, but I think it's mainly a question that there has been a struggle probably to find the right operating model to do this. But I'm quite confident that what First Water is doing now in Nigeria will be a good reference for further scaling. But I agree with you. I don't think there are any obvious good reason except that it's a short. Maybe some countries that I think it also been linked to the uncertainty of the license renewals, right? Because if you want to do this investment, you need to have a perspective of 15-20 years actually, because even if you can have a payback period of 7-8 years, you want to make sure that you can use it. So I know that in many countries it's very much related to the uncertainty about the license the renewals, but I hope this will not be an excuse for too long time. Yeah.
And then building on this topic of the towers, we have a question from Marie-Louise asking, we've seen this by a few other companies where they actually combine powering a telecom tower with powering the nearby village. And literally like the telecom tower becomes the anchor customer, the anchor CNI user of the village, but then the presence of the system also allows to supply the village. Is this something that Empower New Energy is also looking into? Are you planning to do it with some of those 250 sites, or do you focus exclusively on the CNI part?
No, I know that one of the reasons for First Watt to succeed in their pilots has been their ability to add users and then bring additional benefits to local communities. So this is part of our rollout. Is that what we are financing now is you could say the core financing to secure the anchor user, but there will be in several of these. I'm familiar that there are also plans for expansion, and we are ready to take part in that.
All right, you're breaking out a little bit. I don't know if you can still hear me.
That investment, that's what I want is our design. The sites are designed to be able to be scaled up, and as the demand, for instance, for local communities around could grow.
Thank you. And maybe one last question, which is becoming an increasingly important question within our community. You mentioned briefly about international companies feeling pressure from, companies based in Africa feeling pressure from their international partners to reduce their carbon emissions. Is carbon reduction already priced somehow in the projects that you invest in? Is it monetized somehow? I'm afraid we've lost Terje. Are you still with us?
I think there is no. Yeah, I'm with you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me
Yes, now we can hear you again.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So that is also an area where we are working. We have received a grant from African Development Bank to actually now work with a consultant to prepare for certification of carbon credits, for instance, for the telecom towers and from other sites where we replace diesel. But for the moment, there's no money in this market. So what we are, of course, hoping is that it will be we are targeting that this market will grow, so that it will be options to also benefit from this market. But for the moment, it is more like it's in the planning, but not yet. There's no reality behind the scenarios yet. So we hope this will change.
Well, thank you very much once again for taking the time to join us and share about your experience on this specific topic of storage within CNI projects. Congratulations again, and I wish you a very good rest of the day.